Welcome back to Science Fiction Book Trek. Today we'll be doing a spoiler for H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds and what we thought of it. But first, a summary.
So, our book begins with the invasion from Mars. Or rather, Andromeda named Ogilvy, looking up into the heavens and seeing flashes from the planet Mars. Not considering anything too interesting because they think maybe it's just marsh gas refracting off of Venus.
That actually did happen with flashes on Mars at that time.
Okay, that's interesting.
It was an actual event, yes.
But the flashes from Mars are in fact launching the invasion fleet. The chances of anything coming from Mars were 1,000,000 to 1, they said. The first capsule crashes into a common, where it draws attention from the local inhabitants. Our narrator then sees the creatures, and they appear to not be able to walk in Earth's gravity. That doesn't stop them from using a heat ray to vaporize half of the crowd. Thinking this might be a problem, the narrator decides, I think I should get my wife and move away from here. So he goes to the local landlord. Instead of being able to run like the narrator, he decides, oh yeah, sure, I'll lend you my horse.
Couple of quid.
Yeah.
And you're bringing it back? Oh yeah.
So the narrator then takes his wife and some of his belongings and moves away to local Leatherhead,
Where his cousin lives. And he can dump his wife and his servant there.
But being the good Englishman that he is, he promised to return that horse, and return that horse he will. So he then makes the travel back into the town to try and return the horse to its rightful owner, who he finds strung up on a hedge with his neck broke. But having nothing else to do and working out what to do next, he makes his way back to his house, where he then meets the signalman. And so he advises the narrator, cool, grab everything that you can, fill your pockets full of food, and we'll head down the road to the local garrison, and you can then do what you want. I've got to meet up with my regiment.
Via crawling in the ditch.
As they are making their way to the local garrison, there's a surprising amount of people that are just starting to work out that maybe they should make a move.
Don't panic! Don't panic!
Don't panic, sir! Don't panic, sir! Don't panic! Don't panic! Don't panic!
And then the tripod appears over the hill, at which the narrator goes, oh dear.
And the river crossing turns into a massacre.
Well, not just a massacre, but also a slightly scalded narrator.
But he sees a boat and goes, I'm having that.
And paddles the boat downstream until he gets to...
Someplace in London, well, outside London.
I think it's Middlesex.
He gets off and lies in a hedge.
Yes.
He sees all the buildings and thought, nah, hedge. And he wakes up after some murmuring and he finds
the curate. And the curate, the man of God, is not taking this particularly well, as opposed to our military gentleman who had his training to fall back on. This man's training is completely at odds with what he's seeing.
Dougal, we are not watching aliens!
But then that element of the story then breaks off, and then we go to the narrator's brother, who happens to be down in London.
He decided to break into a bicycle shop and nick a bike.
I've got to admit, that was very un-English of him, but
I know.
certainly for the time
He
period.
should have at least left the money on the counter. No, he nicks a bike and rides off. Then he gets a puncher, so he throws it to one side.
Again, this is very much the most un-English gentleman I think I've ever seen.
Oh yes, but then he comes across two women getting accosted by some ruffians. So he goes, I shall box them. So he goes up to him and punches him in the face a few times.
Okay, that's very English, but...
After saving the ladies, the ruffians go, right, we're going to beat you up. And then one of the ladies goes, no, I've got a gun. You beat him up, I shoot you. And the ruffians run away.
Yeah.
So he gets into the ladies' carts.
My reaction would have been, why did you not open with that?
So he jumps in the ladies' cart, takes immediate control, and tells them, no, we're going this way.
Things then proceed to happen up until the point where they decide, we need to get out of Dodge. We'll go to continental Europe. We'll be safe on continental Europe. And so they spend all of the money that they have on buying tickets to get across the channel.
To a ferry, like a little paddle steamer.
All of the time they are hearing reports about the encroachment of the aliens. The aliens are coming. The black smoke, which appears to be some sort of biogenic weapon, which is killing everything that it touches. But then the tripods appear, and they are taken on. It's a torpedo ram, the HMS Thunderchild.
Yep.
Which, that's a badass
Slices
name.
through the water.
Gotta be honest, that's a badass name.
Yeah.
And actually features in the Destiny books, if I remember correctly. But anyway, that is where we leave off the ends of book 1 with the narrator's brother escaping to continental Europe, and then we enter into the part 2, which is considerably quieter. The curate and the narrator are hiding out, bickering with one another. The relationship grows ever sourer the longer that things go on.
Then they decide to play cards in a house, and a cylinder lands on them, and then they're trapped for a whole fortnight.
Being extremely quiet, not wanting to draw attention to themselves, things come to a head, and the narrator has to knock the curate out. At which point, him knocking the curate out then draws the attention of the aliens, and the aliens come in and
Take the curate.
Take the
away.
curate, yes.
Eventually, he manages to climb out after seeing a dog, and then he decides, oh, the aliens have gone off somewhere. I may as well resume my journey to Leatherhead. And then eventually he bumps into an old friend,
Yes, the signalman.
who at first threatens him and then realises who he is, so invites him to join in her digging operation. And the signalman explains his hopes and dreams of the fight back. For no real reason other than he thinks all is lost, he decides to head directly into London, where the Martians are. After hearing one of the tripods constantly for, a few hours, just singing its song, and then it stopped. And it's like, oh god, it stopped. I'm really depressed now. So then he finds one and just runs right to him.
Yep. Only to discover that in actual fact the tripod has stopped moving and the occupant is dead. Which is then when the greatest subversion comes about, which is that the aliens have died because of our pathogens.
Our diseases. And then
I think he then has a complete breakdown. And he's only brought back to the brink of sanity by the
kindness of strangers.
Yeah.
You can always depend on the kindness of strangers to buck up your spirit and shield you from dangers.
And you find in our, destruction, the French have sent us horse meat. He finally gets back home after finding out Leatherhead's been completely wiped off the face of the earth with the heat ray. Gets back home just in time to hear his cousin's voice outside going, oh no one's home. He goes to the front window and he sees his wife standing there. And he goes, ah! And it's a happy reunion. And everyone lives as happily, waiting for the Martians to try again or for humans to destroy themselves.
Yeah.
Anyway, loves and hates.
I like the characterization. I like the characterization of the three. Obviously, your narrator is your major. The fact that he can walk the line between the two extremes, and even then, when you get to the end of the virtually the end of his journey, and even he's starting to break. He's not a soldier. He's not a character that's got his training to fall back on. He's just a philosopher.
Yeah, that's smart.
Let me put it this way. Have you ever heard of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates?
Yes?
Morons.
Really?
Or a writer, I mean, I'd hazard to say that it's a bit of Wells's self-insert, to be
yeah.
perfectly honest.
But it's a self-insert that it doesn't feel like obnoxious.
Well, he's certainly not a Gary Stu.
Yes, that's what I mean. He isn't sort of like a know-it-all person. He does actually feel just like a genuine person caught up in destruction, and he's just, you know, a tiny little piece being swept around in it,
Yeah.
rather than he has any command of the situation whatsoever.
Mm.
But I mean, there are some like little symbolisms and stuff I liked, like the fact, you know, he's coming back, bringing back the cart. He snaps a horse's neck and just leaves it dead in the middle of the road. Doesn't really think about it.
Yeah.
And then later on, sort of the next few pages on, he finds the owner of the cart, the pub landlord, in the middle of the pavement, neck snapped.
I thought he was hanging from the fence.
No, his neck had been snapped as he like hit the fence.
Oh, right, okay. Because
like-
I was imagining he was just lying
Yeah.
on a barbed wire fence.
But it was like the aliens had just accidentally
him
knocked him
aside,
aside, broke his neck, and thought nothing of it. Exactly like he thought nothing of the horse.
Mm.
And it was just little moments like that where it's like, yeah, I wondered like that was on purpose or not. Or because it was so close.
See, that's the thing. I would hazard that it probably is on purpose with the themes of the book. Like you say, it's the idea of it being it's a lower life form.
But no, I mean, it is interesting as, you know, as Wells was a Victorian person brought up in the Victorian Empire.
Working class.
Yeah, but also to have
He managed to work
ideas
his way
of like, now, oh, the Empire isn't,
Perfect.
might not be all it's cracked up to be. You know, people on the other end of the gun are not having a fun time.
Yes.
And if we were on the other end of the gun, we would feel very differently.
Yes.
And also just the dominance over nature as well. And all the chaos we wrought. The other thing I did like is the aliens seem to care about their own.
Yeah.
Like when the first Martian gets killed.
Glenn's bleeding to death! Someone call his wife and children!
They like try to kill everyone else quickly, or like any threats, pick him up and take him away.
Even though it's an inconvenience
Yeah.
for them to be trying to move the body of the
And like,
tripod.
that's one of the reasons why he's essentially saved, because their concentration then is to pick
Recover
up,
the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than kill every last person.
Yeah.
It was just moments like that which I wouldn't say like humanised them, but maybe showed there was more to them than just careless killing.
Well, there's the thing. I mean, the idea of the term humanise in this context, when you do have a thing about you want to humanise something, okay, well, the best way to humanise it is to talk about the near genocide of the Aboriginal Tasmanians.
Yeah.
You know?
It's something that happened.
But like I say, and again, this is another thing that I love. That it wasn't. It's a story that with a message. But I think in a lot of modern writing,
Well, like you can read it as a story,
yes,
and that's it.
but a lot of modern writing doesn't seem to get around the idea of that message. It doesn't seem to get. You can tell a story with a message,
Yeah.
but a lot of modern writing doesn't seem to get around the idea that there's still a story going on. You don't have to just keep going message, smack, message, smack, message, smack. And it's not just a case of that. It's like you could take this in multiple different aspects. You could take it as imperialism, you could take it as evolution, you can take it in terms of one man's struggle against impossible odds to reunite with his wife if you really wanted.
Yeah.
But there's multiple different ways of seeing this novel, and it's not necessarily that Wells is trying to tell you, oh, this is the right way to think. It's just the Martians are
he's
our next evolution.
Yeah, presenting what he sees it as facts, almost like.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just... I'm presenting the information. You do what you want with it, sort of thing. But another thing I liked about it was, like, how quickly he gets his loved ones out of there. Almost, chapter 1, Essentially, it's not. It's like third one or something. But I love that, and I think that's one of the issues I have with some adaptations.
This has been written as a story of one man's journey going through absolute hell. It doesn't necessarily need you to have that romance angle,
and that's
or
what
the
I like
protective
about
story. It's how would a single person deal with an apocalyptic scenario where essentially
everything's being destroyed.
Yeah. And like I say, you've got the other two characters, the curate and they show different aspects.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's still the narrator's journey.
But yeah, I mean, is there anything you dislike about it?
I can't think of anything that particularly stood out to me as something that it would be like, bollocks. And that's where I'm going to come up a cropper with the nitpicking section as well, because I couldn't really find anything that I could... I enjoyed it as a, I just enjoyed it. But I couldn't find anything that personally...
Okay, well, I mean, that's fine. We'll go on to nitpicks. For my nitpicks, mine are just a bit loose. I mean, the first one would be the cylinders that crash. Ogleby doesn't, initially tries to run to touch it, but it's too hot. And from what I understand, that wouldn't be the case. Not if it's been cooling overnight. For a start, it's been in deep space for, I think it's a week.
Yes, which would cool it to near absolute.
Cool it up to absolute zero. So, though it would come in and hit the atmosphere, get hot, it's almost like a baked Alaska. It's just warm on the outside, but it's freezing in the middle. So, as soon as it took a couple hours for the heat to cool, it would be probably too cold to touch, but it wouldn't be too hot to touch.
I don't...
I mean, it depends if, the Martians have sort of central heating inside the capsule and stuff like that.
The actual science behind the capsules is admittedly an interesting one, because in order for it to put it this way, the G-forces experience from launching something from what is believed to be a
It's
gun?
just a giant cannon, yeah.
Yeah. The idea of being able to launch something into orbit from Mars from just a gun, the G-forces that you would incur just getting into orbit, and then flying across the gap between Mars and Earth, and then, like you say, the G-forces of something coming in and impacting with the ground. Because it is just a capsule, there's no retro rockets, there's no air braking, there's no... After entering the atmosphere, there's no
it's just a bullet, essentially.
Yeah. So for it to have such a... for it to be able to impact with such a level like that, and not be destroyed on impact. Not
Or be buried completely.
Yeah, not burn up in the atmosphere. The only thing that I can think of, and this is from my own science knowledge, is perhaps it was some sort of interior that was lined with gel to keep the occupants from the thermal stresses, the G-forces, the impact stresses. But this is obviously stuff that Wells didn't necessarily have access to as far as thinking.
Anyone really at that time.
Yeah, I mean, even the science with regards to what they thought the Martian surface was, that is based on the thinkings of
the canals. Yeah.
Yes, Schiaparelli.
Yeah, I believe so. Next nitpick is because of the gravity difference and because of the Martians, how they are, with like sort of no real limbs, just like a few tentacles and stuff. I don't think I would be even able to move at all on human gravity. They would just be, firmly stuck
pinned to the floor.
Yeah, and couldn't even drag themselves because they haven't got the muscles.
Yeah,
because everything would be so much harder for them, even with the inflated rich oxygen.
I mean
that's
obviously why the engineering thing of the tripods is required.
But at first you see him crawling about the pit to put stuff together. But yeah. Anyway, to go on to my last nitpick and my only other one, is when they're locked in after he's killed the curate.
Yes.
And he's hiding in the coal scuttle. He emerges later on and finds the Martian has took all the food. Why?
That didn't...
Because they don't eat food.
I've got to admit, that was a...
That was just weird to me. I mean, at that point, they probably didn't have a lot of food whatsoever because it had been 10 days to that point. Yeah, but they said they only had rations for that allotment.
But at the same time, the idea that they are feasting on humanity.
Yeah. Which is they don't need food at all. I mean, I would understand if it was only a chunk of bread left and they took it to go, what's this? Like they did with a lump of coal. I could understand that. But he specifically said they took all the food.
Yeah.
Really?
It doesn't make sense unless they are trying to remove the ability for humans or more humans to gather in that place, or they don't want humans to gather and then stay because there's food, or they're trying to remove the...
Maybe. Because they don't know about putrefaction and stuff rotting.
That's true.
As you mentioned. So, yeah, maybe that's the case. Let's talk about adaptations.
Yeah. Certainly the most famous adaptation, probably that comes to mind, is going to be Orson Welles' radio play.
Okay, yeah.
That would be what I would think.
Oh, worldwide, probably, yes.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I do like. I mean, it sort of captures the essence of the chaos.
It certainly captured that.
I mean, it's only about an hour, isn't it? And yeah, it captures the chaos and the first one transposes it to America.
Yes.
Which is fine. But yeah, it is. I do like it. I wouldn't say it's War of the Worlds, but it is a segment. It feels more like the stage with his brother.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The fleeing panic.
Again,
more than anything else.
I've not had the benefits of being able to listen to it all the way through. I've had snippets at best. But the idea that it was done in such a way that it actually sounds like a true radio broadcast.
Yes.
The other adaptation I did want to talk about is
Right.
the Tom Cruise version,
Right.
which
Because
is
there's been 2 film versions. And
yes,
Tom Cruise one.
this particular one, the Tom Cruise one, and it relates more so to what was going on at the time in America.
Yeah.
And it was released in 2005. Bear in mind that prior to 2005, you had the likes of Independence Day, you had Mars Attacks. Disaster films were quite regular fare.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have 9/11, where the whole world sees a major disaster happen, major landmarks that were obviously destroyed in the process, and America's appetite for disaster films just sort of went bump. So it was pretty brave of Steven Spielberg to suddenly go, right, I'm going to tell a disaster film again. And it's only a few years later. It's interesting that he would choose to do that. And again, told from the perspective of an American family fleeing what was obviously a harrowing situation. But
however, it still does have a happy ending.
An undeserved happy ending.
Yeah. And just to like a what?
Yes.
Happy ending. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that film just because one, it's I'm a man. I have to take care of these loved ones, and I have to get them to safety. Like that's the film for me, and with like stupidity inserted.
We catch up with these soldiers, hook up with whoever else isn't dead, and we get back at them.
Robbie, we gotta stay together, Robbie. Robbie.
Robbie! Robbie!
I need to be here. I want to see this. Wait. Just stick around. Joseph, your sister. Please let me go. You need to let me go.
A few moments later. Much later.
Right, the other adaptation that is probably well known in Britain is the Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, the like musical version.
Yeah.
That is probably the closest to any version that's to the book, and even then that changes, a handful of bits. Because like the brother is taken out, it's all just the main character's story.
Yeah.
So, but even though the Thunderchild is still in it as well. So. But yeah, but also in the book, the Thunderchild gets 2 kills. In Jeff Wayne's version, he only gets 1. I'm just saying. I mean, at least give the Thunderchild its due respects.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there was a recent adaptation by the BBC. I think it was 2019.
Don't know about that one.
Yeah, it's held by a lot of people. It was set in Edwardian England. For some reason, I don't know. But yeah, I watched the first 15 minutes and went, alright, I see what you're doing. I see what you're trying to do and the issues you're tackling. I would prefer to watch War of the Worlds. So I switched it off. It was just doing its own thing. And I just went, yeah, okay, if you're not even going to engage with the book, I can't be bothered. Which was a shame. I mean, there has been a few other adaptations. There's also authorised sequel.
Oh yeah, forgot we were going to talk about that.
Yeah, by Stephen Baxter, who also did the sequel to Time Machine. But the sequel to this was The Massacre of Mankind.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there has been a number of other adaptations in comics, books, and like all sorts of spin-offs, shall we say, and sequels that could be to this or to other versions of it. Let's go on to our overall thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I love the book. It's one of my favourites. I think everyone should read it. Even if you've experienced some other versions of What Bloods, I think you should read the book. It is well worth it. And I can't understand why the book has never been adapted as just the book.
Oh, a one-for-one adaptation.
Yeah. Overall, I loved it and give it a thumbs up.
Yep. I'm happy with it. I think definitely give it a read. Give this a read and perhaps have a look at some of the adaptations, if only to laugh. But
well, at least listen to Jeff Wayne's words.
So,
but also, if you're listening to Jeff Wayne's words, get the one with Richard Burton narrating, not Liam Neeson. I know you've heard of Liam Neeson, but no, it's not as good. Get Richard Burton. Better. So, what will we be reading next week?
We'll be reading Lloyd Biggle Jr., written by Monument.
Yes!
I'm sorry, I had to run that joke.
That was that. Yeah, tune in next week for a review of that book. And bye.
Bye.
Empire.
The English Empire, British Empire, rather. So,
Well, I'm sure at the time they called it English Empire, but yes.
well, yeah.
I like credit with everything.
I'm not giving the Scottish any fucking credit.
We bail them out, so I mean...